This is Rabbi Chevra of the Shmooze.com. Jewish adulting is about shining a light on parts of ourselves in order to do Avodas Hashem with all the tools and resources at our disposal. It is an honor and a privilege to have every day to further refine our character and grow closer to Hashem. Take advantage of these opportunities before it's too late.
Hello, everybody. This is your host, Chevra Rose, for the Jewish Adulting Podcast. I have with me Yehiel Kalish, who is currently the CEO of the Chevra Hatzalah Volunteer Ambulance Service. He was previously a state representative for Illinois and held leadership roles in the business sector, including principal at S4 Group and chairman and CEO from 2014 to 2019. He worked at the Agudath Israel of America in various capacities, overseeing development, legislative advocacy, and regional offices. Yehiel holds a BA in Judaic Studies and Semicha from Hebrew Theological College, as well as an MPA in nonprofit management and leadership from Walden University. So thank you so much for being with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah. What's funny is I was going to go into nonprofit management as a master's degree as well, and I decided against it. But I do have my undergrad is in nonprofit management, so we are the same in that regard. Jewish communal services is near and dear to my heart, even if I don't currently work in it. So Yehiel actually,
I would say this is trying to be a communal service, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, yes, my Jewish Adulting Podcast is, yes, a Jewish communal activity for sure. So Yehiel, I was thinking about this. I've known Yehiel since I was 18, maybe even 17. I can't remember how long.
Younger. Yeah.
Yeah. And we haven't spoken since high school, but
since you were in high school.
Since I was in high school. And actually you helped me write my graduation speech, which I resented with the passion of 1,000 burning suns that Rabbi Kibbel made us write a graduation speech. But I'm curious if you remember the topic that I chose. You don't remember the topic?
No.
I remember I'm a little bit still like this. I'm not going to say that I'm not like this anymore, but I remember saying, like, what is the most controversial subject that I can think of to discuss during a graduation speech that I don't think I should be giving, but only because it was a small class and I guess they wanted, I don't know, whatever, everyone to give a speech. So actually my topic was Rachav. And I wrote a speech about how inspiring she was.
She was. She ended up being the wife of Yoshua, and she ended up being mother of many Gedolei Torah. So,
yeah, but you took it with such a straight face when I told you. Like, you... I'm sure as like a young Kola guy, this 18-year-old girl is like, if I have to give a speech, I'm going to give it about like a zona. Like I'm gonna be as controversial as possible. I did give that speech. And to this day, I find it quite amusing. Luckily, my daughter did not follow.
Which approach did you take? Because Rachel saved her family. She married Yoshua. She became, a leader in Klal Yisrael herself.
Well, so. Considering that you helped me like research and write that paper and that speech, I feel like it really behooves you to remember it because I don't remember. I don't remember. I mean, I'm sure I went the way of like, she was an inspiring yada yada. I don't remember, but I'm sure you made it sound okay. I'm sure you polished it with your regular, ability
Hope
to.
So.
Yes. Okay. So now that everyone knows a little bit about me and you and whatever, so I called you up and I said, I'd love to talk to you, thinking you're going to definitely want to talk about Hatzalah because that's your current passion. But to my surprise, you wanted to talk about voting. And I guess it's not that much of a surprise because you were a delegate and you were involved with the Agudath, and that requires a lot of advocacy, a lot of, polling and voting and creating bills and
I'm still very involved. I'm still very involved in Illinois politics, and as a as an extracurricular activity, and because you can't leave it. And with regards to my role in Hatzalah as a Jewish communal leader in New York, I'm very involved in all of the advocacy efforts that groups like Agudath Israel and the OU, are involved in on a regular basis. So yeah, no. So even though Hatzalah is awesome, we could talk about Hatzalah, but as it relates to um, what it is that you are looking to accomplish in your podcast here, I felt that voting probably made a lot more sense, right?
Right. So tell me about when you first started thinking that this might be an issue for the Orthodox community. Like, at what point during your career and your involvement did you start to say, like, oh, maybe not enough people understand the importance of this? Or why did you feel like it was important? Like, isn't it enough? And then I have another interviewer told me I have a habit of asking too many questions at once. So what I'm going to do
Gonna
is I'm
get
going
a
to try to
pencil here.
yeah, I'm gonna give you all the questions now, and you just
No.
remember them and answer them in the order which would you remember them.
How about one or two at a time? Yeah.
One or two at a time. Okay. So really, I'm curious to know about, like, when you started realizing that voting was
I
really
have been
important.
involved. I have been involved in um, elections since I can remember to think. I remember. I remember Reagan. I remember George H. Bush. I remember when W came up. So yeah, I've been involved in politics, and I had a love for uh, that language since I can remember. And that's important to know because politics is a language. Politics is hard for the general public to understand. We like to say on the political side, we like to say that the general public understands yes, no. Sometimes they can understand maybe. But they understand yes and they understand no. They understand black, they understand white. General public cannot really consume gray, or because it's just too much. You're involved in your life. You have your kids. You have your family. You have your own struggles. There's just so much going on in every human's life. The political language is difficult for people to understand. So it's something that I understood naturally, gift from Hashem. It's one of the things that He gave me that I was able to understand and connect with early on. And I knew pretty early on, way before I was involved in, lobbying professionally, that others didn't. I knew I did, and I knew others didn't because I would want to talk about things. I want to converse about subjects, and the other side either didn't or they just, the ideas that were coming out of them were from a place of non-understanding. So it's very early on. And, because of that, if you understand the language and you understand the power that is involved in the political system, then you're naturally wanting to bring your friends, your family, your community together with you and to say, hey, guys, this is important, right? So I've been doing that since before I was paid to do that.
Okay, so at what point did you realize that people didn't necessarily have that understanding, that intuitive understanding, that voting, that being involved in political processes was as important to you as it was to them? And how is that? Why is that important? That people who are not necessarily engaged, become engaged.
Yeah, it's you have to engage at some level. But answering your first question, I'm trying to think, of the consequential elections, in our lifetime. You know, from 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 Reagan to Bush, and from Bush to Clinton, right? Or the local elections that were going on. Probably the first time that I really understood that people didn't get it was the state representative race in Illinois Lou Lang versus a guy by the name of Michael Moses. Michael Moses is a frum guy in Chicago who was trying to become the state representative. And my mentor at the time, the person who really has taught me the most from the beginning till now in Jewish leadership is a guy by the name of Rabbi David Schnell, who was the president of the Agudath in Illinois, and I think his title now is President Emeritus. But I don't think there's a more successful per capita Askin. He's up there with the Grace. He's on Mount Rushmore for me. So he really he he taught me a lot, and we really carved in that campaign. And Michael Moses was a frum guy, and we decided we were going to back Lou Lang. Lou was on Torah issues pretty bad on a lot of the issues, but he represented the needs of the community very well in Springfield. And with Hadracha from the Das Torah at the time, we had to motivate the community to vote for Lang because Moses had a good shot at beating him. And the Herculean efforts that it took to explain to people, A, that they had to vote, B, that they had to vote for this guy. It was just so unbelievable. And that was, I think it was either 2002 or 2004 when that election took place. And every 2 years since then, it's been the same. It has never gotten easier. It has never gotten clearer. It is always Herculean. It is always difficult. To this day, no matter how many kol koros we have from Gedolei Torah, no matter how many situations we have where we have close elected elections, I live in a district now in Far Rockaway, where the current state representative is a woman by the name of Stacey Pfeffer Amato. And Stacey Pfeffer Amato won her last election in our district by 15 votes, 1-5, Ameshus, right? Out of thousands and thousands and thousands of votes that were cast, 15 votes made the difference. And if you look at presidential elections, there are states that Tennessee, I think was the Bush year, right? Tennessee was like a couple thousand votes that decided, where Tennessee was going to go in the Gore race, the Bush Gore race, and because Gore was from Tennessee. I mean, you're talking about minuscule amounts of numbers that made a difference. And think about it, Cheva. How many you live in Baltimore? How many from people are in Baltimore? How many from?
I'm choking. I don't know. A lot.
A lot. Yeah.
A lot. We're not Far Rockaway a lot, but we're up there. We have a lot of people here.
I'm guessing the Baltimore community has somewhere around 50,000 from Jews, right? That's my guess. I'm guessing there's probably around 15 to 20,000 in the schools.
Right. I'll be asking the questions moving forward. Just
But if you think about it, right? If you think about the 50,000 people that live in Baltimore, and there's probably, I don't know, I'm guessing there's somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 votes over your district. Makes a difference. I mean, look at who you have as representative. You have this, from young lady as state representative for one of your areas. You guys were involved in the election of, a Republican governor, in Maryland, which is like crazy. So, when the frum community can be galvanized, and when the frum community can, exert their numbers, there's tens of thousands more minorities who live in Baltimore than Orthodox Jews. But if all the frum Jews vote, then as it relates to the electorate, that's the only numbers that matter. So if there's 50,000 frum Jews, and then there's hundreds of thousands in this other camp, but they don't vote, and they vote at a third of what the frum community votes, then there isn't 300,000 of that other group. There's only 100,000 of that other group, and there's 50,000 of this group. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when the national average is voting at 20 to 30%, and we vote at 70 to 90%, then our value is double. Every Jew, every Orthodox Jew is worth 2 votes.
Okay. So first of all, who won that election that you backed the not
Lou Lang.
religious? Okay. Okay. So I have a lot of questions here. So let's take a step back here. There are two things that come to mind as you tell me these stories. One is when a candidate doesn't back Torah values. I have seen letters from Rabbi saying like, I'm not allowed to say who I vote, who to vote for, but I'm voting for this person, right? And sometimes it's a shock, actually. Sometimes I'm looking at the people and I'm like, I don't care that he's backing that person. That's a person who's like anti-Jewish values and who's like a rabid, anti-Semite. And I don't understand how, they're voting for them. And it's just because they're a sitting, they're the current sitting one. So if they win, you gotta I mean, it becomes like I know that I have some trust issues in this regard, right? I'm going to be like, I don't know, should I be listening to the rabbis on this? So what you're telling me is that there's
First, I'm telling you, there's a language you don't understand, right?
Right.
That's
Right.
the first thing, right? That's really important to remember, because this is a language, and remember, that's the first thing I said, language
Right.
people don't understand,
Right.
and they don't understand more than black and white. You just proved the point,
Right.
right? Which is great, but my message to someone like you who hears their rabbi say, "I'm gonna," it used to be that their shiva. I think it was Rabbi Neuberger, Zechariah Lebracha, Rav Naftali Neuberger, Zechariah Lebracha, who used to pin who he was voting for up on his door, and then he would go out to vote, right? And so therefore wasn't endorsing. A lot of times people don't want to endorse because they don't want to put the nonprofit that they are so wholly connected to into a situation with the IRS. So because it's nonprofits are not allowed to necessarily endorse candidates. That's a gray area. That somehow some segments of society have been able to flaunt it and others haven't. But it's a conversation for a different time. But the Rev Newber used to post on Oswald and used to go vote. So let's say you're one of those guys in yeshiva, just like you, who looks at that thing. I'm not voting for that guy. My God, how can you vote? He votes for gay rights. He votes for abortion, right? I'm not going to vote for that guy. But that guy doesn't vote, and that's terrible. What's better is that guy goes and votes for whoever he wants to. It's better to vote for quote unquote the wrong person than not to vote at all. Because remember what we said in terms of the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
If you vote, you count. If you don't vote, then you don't exist, right? When communities complain that there are all of these policies that don't include them, or these policies that are anti them, push comes to shove. If you do the research and you look it up, those are probably communities that don't vote, because when the people sitting around the table make decisions, and I've been at those tables, when the people sitting around the table make decisions, they say, well, if we take this position, it's really not going to affect us in any way, because the people who support this position are going to vote anyway.
Mm.
So now, even if you vote for the wrong guy, they know that you're in the booth. And they know, okay, she's going to the polls. That I want to communicate with her to make sure she votes for me. You hear what I'm saying?
Yes. So let me ask you a question. What is the reputation of the Frum community in terms of whether they vote or don't vote? Because you've been at the table where people are discussing, well, these constituents votes and these constituents don't vote. So even though we technically side with the constituents that don't vote, we're going to make policies that benefit those that do, right? So what is the reputation of the Jewish community in terms of voting?
Depends where, It really depends, where the reputation is. Let's take New York, which is the biggest example. At Lakewood, they just elected Avi Schnall, which is just incredible what just happened in Lakewood. I mean, it sent reverberations throughout the entire country.
Well, you're going to have to tell me because I don't follow Lakewood politics.
Yes, Lakewood was represented by a Republican assemblyman for that area was Republican dark red for decades. Rabbi Avi Schnall decided he's going to run for the seat as a Democrat, and got the Rabbana behind him, and boom, decades of Republican representation was gone. And they were able to overturn a massive seat to a Democratic seat, but it's a moderate Democrat, right? Avi Schnall is by no means a progressive. He's a Ben Torah. He's Chosh V'Yid, and but he's siding with the Democrats because on social services and on issues related to education, it's hard for people to understand, but we actually have more in line with Democrats than Republicans on some of these issues. It was the Republicans who tried to cut Medicaid completely out of the budget. Paul Ryan tried to do that when he was the Speaker of the House. I remember because I lobbied hard to make sure that didn't happen. Medicaid, Medicare. I mean, flash these service programs. Republicans have since come around on that, but that is the party that is slashing and burning in terms of these social services and social safety net issues. But that is the power of a community who votes. When you ask the question in regards to how's like the New York community viewed or the Chicago community viewed, Chicago community is definitely viewed as a community that votes. The Baltimore community is certainly viewed as a community that votes. Probably 60 to 70%. New York, I have a funny story. So there's the Mayor Bloomberg won 2 elections on the promise that he was not going to run for a third, because the law at the time said that the mayor could only run twice. Bloomberg changed the law so that he could run a third time. And he went very strongly after the Orthodox vote. Each time Bloomberg won, everyone agrees that Bloomberg was a great mayor on many fronts, especially when you compare him to what happened afterwards with de Blasio. So on many fronts, Bloomberg was a good mayor, but he was a Republican, and he was winning as a Republican in a very strong Democratic city. So every time he ran, all 3 times, it was close. That he would come to the frum community. He was at a popular newspaper, it doesn't matter which, giving an interview. And the editor of the newspaper said to the mayor, as he was, sitting down, "It's very important that you came here," right? Some comment like that, like saying to the mayor how important it was. It was Michael Bloomberg, who was worth at that time $6 billion, and he was the mayor for 8 years already. And she mentioned to him how important it was that he came here. Anyway, I was at the meeting, and as we were walking out, Bradley Tusk, who is now one of the top lobbyists in the country, he is Uber's lobbyist around the country. Bradley Tusk, who was the mayor's chief of staff at the time, looked at me and said, "That's malarkey." That wasn't the word he used, but what she said to the mayor, because your community only voted at 40% in the last mayoral election. He had the numbers clear. And he says, if you guys don't come out to the 60, 70%, you are going to be irrelevant in City Hall. So they are watching us, even though we have 1 million people here in New York. Every election, every mayoral election, every presidential election, every midterm election, they look at our numbers, they look to see if we vote. If we don't vote, then all of the programs, everything that we try to accomplish on a regular basis can and will be erased um, you know, the sleight of hand.
Okay, so again, so many questions. Well, first of all, you mentioned something. I don't know if this is a discussion point or not, but I have noticed that a lot of times Orthodox politicians run as Democrats because, as you mentioned, there are a lot of Democratic programs that a lot of people rely on with large families, and some are in learning, some are, whatever it is that we need those programs many times, especially as newlyweds and young families. As people are establishing themselves, they rely on these democratic programs, and then people, and so then I see that politicians are running, Orthodox politicians are running on that platform, and it's very interesting how it is black and white in this country, that you either support the programs or you don't support the programs. And there is a gray area that I've always been aware of, because even as when we were like a young newlyweds and we were getting WIC in Lakewood, my husband was in Colel, and I would say, like, I'm so glad these programs are here. They're literally like helping me medical insurance, while we were students in college, and all of that. They're literally life saving. On the other hand, there is so much, there's people taking advantage of the system. There's people getting it who, are not here legally, and that's taxes that people pay into the system and then goes to other. I mean, it
Yes.
does end up becoming like.
I'm with you on the immigrant issue, and within the Democratic Party, there's no question about it that the immigrant issue is, the legal aliens that exist in this country that are taking advantage of these programs is something that Barack Obama opposed. But today, if you speak about it, people, conveniently forget it was Obama who has the highest record of returning people back, who came into this country illegally. I don't think there's a higher number of people, of any president who was able to put people back in the right borders than Obama. Trump tried. Trump was right, and he said it in the debate, that if the Biden administration had just kept his policies going on the border, this country would be safer, and we wouldn't be dealing with some of these issues. But to your point about WIC, there's no question that when you needed it, it was available to you. And again, put immigration aside for a second. But as you develop and become more successful financially, you are now paying into the system to help others. And that's something that we agree. I mean, if you look at the Torah Kedosha and the way the system is set up within the Torah, right? The amount that comes off the top is pretty high. Trumas, Mises, all of that. The Leket, Shichla, Peah, all of these different categories. The amount that we as consumers or as business people or as workers have to provide for others is exceedingly high in the Torah Kadesh Baruch Hashem, because we have to understand that all parnasa comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything we have is going to come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everything that we give away was never ours to begin with. Right? That's the Jewish way of looking at it. In the American way, the more you have, the more you're going to give. The less you have, the more you need. And that's much more of a Democrat value than a Republican value, which is simply built on supposedly simply built on economics. But again, Republicans today are not Republicans of the past, and Democrats today are not Democrats of the past.
Right.
There's definitely the issues, getting back to from people running as Democrats, some of the issues are making it way more challenging. Some of these progressive issues, and certainly since October 7th, aligning, they're ripping the Democratic Party apart. The intersectionality of anti-Semitism with progressive, natures, completely it's ripping the party apart, and people don't get to see that. I see it. I'm still involved on the other side sometimes, and it's ripping it apart. You have Democrats that are screaming that we are pro-Israel. My children went to the Democratic National Convention the night that the hostage family spoke, and they heard the support for these families at the convention from the regular Democrats. These are right. These are the people who are at the convention. These are the real Democrats. To be at this convention, you have to be elected as a delegate. So these are the people who decided to choose Kamala Harris as their, representative for president of the United States, and they rose up in support of the hostage family. There was no anytime anything pro-Palestine came up inside the halls, like it was gone in a minute. And that's because the Democratic leadership wanted that gone in a minute. So it's very hard. It's very challenging for the party.
Well, I feel like we could go on a total side tangent, and that's not the purpose of this podcast, about, what's right or wrong. But I have never thought of it in terms of, paying into a system of taking care of our brothers and sisters rather than, people taking advantage. And there is definitely misappropriation of funds. We're not going to get into that. What I really wanted to, we could definitely talk about that for a long time.
Yeah, and I always like to say the government's slow, not stupid. 9 out of 10 of those people get caught. Right. 9 out of 10.
Right.
They're slow, not stupid. At some point, those people pay.
Right.
In one way or another.
Right. Okay. So let's
Al Capone. Why did Al Capone go to jail?
Right, because of he was tax evasion.
Tax evasion.
Yeah.
Right. At one point in time, they're going to go to jail. They're going to get caught.
Right. So I'm going to sort of combine a few questions that I had into one question, which is, you mentioned the obligation from the Torah to take care of, the people who are less fortunate, and all of like our tzedakah that we give. What other, besides for, there's Tikkun Olam, which one could say that voting is an extension of Tikkun Olam. You can say, right, there's, you didn't say that. I'm saying it. One can say,
you're forgetting the last part of that phrase. I say it all the time. It's L'saken olam b'malchus shakai. That is the mitzvah of that is what we say in Aleinu. L'saken olam b'malchus shakai. That to fix the world in the kingdom of heaven, in the kingdom of Hashem, right? Just like we're entering Rosh Hashanah right now, and the purpose of Rosh Hashanah is to be mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if you think about that purpose of being mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yimlech Hashem le'olam l'kayef tzion l'dor v'dor hallelujah, right? That's the yesod of Malchus Hashem. That is Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam is to be mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, beginning, middle, and end. That's it. L'saken olam b'malchus shakai. Yimlech Hashem l'kayef tzion. But the idea, the Torah value in voting is Hakaras HaToiv, where Moshe Feinstein wrote it in a Tshuva in 1986. And Moshe wrote in his Tshuva in 1986 that when we came into this land, the land embraced us and the country embraced us. And Moshe even writes in his Tshuva that they embraced us to the point that they have become the greatest friends to Israel. And the Hakaras HaToiv is, in Ramesha's words, is recognizing the benefits afforded us and giving expression to our appreciation to this country. Therefore, it is incumbent upon each Jewish citizen to participate in the democratic system which guards our freedoms we enjoy. He says the most fundamental responsibility incumbent on each individual is to register and to vote. October 3rd, 1984. 1984, not 1986. 1984. That was 40 years ago that Rav Moshe wrote this tshuva. We have many tshuvas that were written throughout the generations from Gedolei Torah. that how important it is to get out and vote. So
Yeah.
there's
So
definitely that
right. So
that's the Nakud.
that was like you said, 1940.
84.
84, sorry. 1984, sorry. 1984. So that was a bit ago. I mean, if my math is right, in 30 something years. So
40.
what are contemporary rabbanim saying about the
So
importance of
the most contemporary, there's the most contemporary American rabbi, and there's the most contemporary Israel rabbi. The Maaseh Gedolei Torah of Agudath Israel comes out every 2 years. Um, you know, re reiterating the points that Moshe Feinstein, made. So I think I'm looking at the last one. The last Mayatzis Kol Koreh says that the first is Hakras HaTayv, and the second is Hishtadlus. That's the two Yesodis that the Mayatzis gave the last time. How important Hishtadlus is. And, the Kol Koreh I was involved in when George W. Bush was running for re-election. We knew it was going to be a close election, and we knew that Ohio was going to be very important. So I went to Reb Chaim Stein, Zechreinu Livracha. Reb Chaim Stein was the Rosh Yeshiva in Telz, Cleveland, and I asked him to write a Kol Koreh. We didn't have, as good as Trump was, and Trump did a lot of amazing things, one of the most important presidents in the history of the Jewish people in Israel, in America, was George W. Bush. He was unbelievable for Eretz Yisrael, for the state of Israel, in terms of military support, in terms of intelligence support. So many different things that he did for Israel, way above any other president before or after. And again, you could argue with Trump, but
I won't.
no, um, yeah. So, but the Kol Koreh that he wrote, he said that somebody could ask, Ma ani ma koli, who am I and what is my voice? Because we see that there are so many times that it doesn't make a difference, Reb Chaim Stein wrote. But he encouraged people that V'ro'u kol amei haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra aleinu. He says the Klal Yisrael, everyone sees what Klal Yisrael does. And he said, he wrote the letter that everyone sees what Klal Yisrael does, and if Klal Yisrael is out there voting, that in and of itself is going to encourage other people to vote. And if they know who Klal Yisrael is voting for, that's going to help them make their decision as well. So, he that was the Kol Koreh that he wrote, not that long ago.
Right, but wasn't there, I remember when I was younger, I don't remember who it was, but there was, I went to a class called Beis Yaakov, and one of the things I remember being talked about, and I was a teenager, so like take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but I remember somebody saying, it's not good for Jews to be involved in politics because, especially like on the higher level of government, we don't want a Jewish from president because then everything will be blamed on the Jews, and then it shines a light on us, and we're not perfect, and we do, make mistakes, and we do, we're fallible, and so it can lead to a lot of anti-Semitism, to be so engaged and make and impact policies in the way that the Frum community has been during the all these years involved in politics, and specifically in your role. Have you seen that? Is that like a legitimate thing to say, like, that it brings hatred onto the Jews by the amount of involvement that they have? And, because to be honest, it does kind of feel that way.
Again, I think that's the Hagavim, that we look at ourselves as the grasshoppers as opposed to giants. No, I don't ascribe to that value at all. In fact, my Masar comes from Meir Shapiro, the founder of the Daf Yomi, who is also a member of the Polish Sejm, which is the parliament in Poland. And for generations, the Barbanel, the Rambam, others. We've had Gedolei Torah and powerful Askanim who were at the seat of power. If there is hatred towards Yiddish because the halacha is of Sinus Yaakov, it has nothing to do with the position we're in, and at some point they are going to hate us. It's not because we're in power, not because we control the weather, but it's because there's a natural jealousy that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose Klal Yisrael to accept the Torah and nobody else. So that's and for no matter how many empires have come and gone, the Jewish and have tried to wipe out the Jewish people. It is our connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu and the Torah Kadosha that has kept us, where we are today. So no, we have to do all we can. We have to get to whatever position we can. Joe Lieberman almost did it, and he was the North Star for a lot of us, aspiring to political heights in this country. And there have been some very, very important. Jack Lew, who was the was Secretary of the Treasury. There have been some very important Torah Jews, Orthodox Jews, and secular Jews who have had important positions in this country, going back to the Civil War when I'm blanking on his name. I think Abraham was his last name. I think that was his last name. But anyway, I think it was the vice president of the southern states was a Jew, and the funder of the Army of the North was a Jewish family. I mean, like, we've been involved in major. The Jewish community has been involved in issues in this country for hundreds of years. So yeah, no, I don't ascribe to that.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you. Well, okay. Here's another question I have for you. Again, another one of my youthful opinions about voting is that I remember when I go to the voting booth and I press on my candidate and I say a little tefillah that basically says, whoever's supposed to win this election, whoever Hashem wants to be in control, whatever is the judgment that Hashem's putting on us for the next 4 years, whether that be a terrible administration or a fantastic administration, an administration that does a lot for the Jews or doesn't do a lot for whatever it is, that's up to Hashem. All I can do is push the button and do my hishtadlus, right? But I think that there is a large segment of the population, Jews and non-Jews alike, who are religious, who say it doesn't really matter if I vote because Hashem will put in power whoever is supposed to be in power, whatever our, I don't want to say din because that sounds so terrible, but whatever our future is for the next 4 years, that's up to Hashem. What kind of 4 years He wants to give us, almost in line with like Rosh Hashanah. It's already signed, sealed, delivered. You're just pushing the button. Does it matter at the end of the day? How would you've said it through the course of this conversation a few times. I'm asking again in a different way. That sort of naivety that comes with that thought, in my opinion, is
Yaakov Avinu. Let me ask you this question. Yeah. Yaakov Avinu, when he was facing the Sarah Shel Esav, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was facing the Malach of Esav, and he was and he davened to Kadosh Baruch Hu. He was like, what's going to happen here? And then he went to face Esav himself, and he was like, Katainti mikola chasodim mikola emes, right? He's davening to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Maybe I sinned, and maybe the Kadosh Baruch Hu had promised Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov up to that point for over 100 years that there is going to be a Klal Yisrael. That not only is there going to be a Klal Yisrael, there's going to be a Klal Yisrael because of the Zechus Avos. So what is this tefillah from Yaakov? Obviously, he's going to win this war. He's going to win this war. He's going to come out on the other side. Not only is he going to win this war, he knew the Navi, he knew the Nevi'im, the Nevuos. He knew that there's going to be 12 Shvatim, that there's going to be these wives. Like, that was all known. So
Right.
what fear did he have? Shimshon Pincus says it beautifully, and it really answers, your question, that you're looking for. The Shimshon Pincus, says that, even though we see in this week's parasha by Moshe Rabbeinu knew he wasn't going to Eretz Yisrael, and he davened to Hakadosh Baruch Hu anyway. Even if you know the outcome, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is mevakesh from Klal Yisrael hishtadlus. He's mevakesh that you're hishtadlus. He's mevakesh that you mispalel. Like when you go into a voting booth and you ask for the right thing to happen, that's a beautiful zach. That is exactly what it is the Ratzon Abari. The Ratzon Abari is that you go to Ishtadlus. You don't know. You have no idea what's going to be. You're not a Navi like Yaakov Avinu, right? But even Yaakov Avinu, who was a Navi, did the same tefillah that you did, which is an amazing thing, right? I don't know, right? You know, let this happen, right? But go. You got to go, right? You got to do it. You got to make the effort. So that's the that's the aside, that you have to be mishtadel, right? You have to put your effort in. Obviously, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring the results that are supposed to happen, on behalf of Klal Yisrael. But just like Yaakov Avinu daven, just like Moshe Rabbeinu daven, just like Daily Torah, throughout the generations daven, when either they knew or didn't know what was going to be the end result. That's they're mishtadel, they're mispalel, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu does the rest.
Okay, that's excellent. I want to let you go back to your important work that you do with Hatzalah and
Yes.
everything you do. Is there anything that we didn't cover, or any message that you feel like you didn't have an opportunity to share? Because I know you're very passionate about this. Do you feel like we covered everything? If you don't, now
I think we did.
time.
I think the most important thing is just vote. Doesn't matter who you vote for. I want to reiterate that.
Okay.
Just vote. Because when you vote, you count. And the people who are working hard for you, and there's not a community that isn't either represented by Agudath Israel or by the OU or by some, very well-meaning group of individuals who care about the community. It emboldens their efforts when you go and vote. Again, doesn't matter for who. Go and vote. Go and vote for Mickey Mouse. It doesn't matter, because if that makes you feel good, do it. I'm not endorsing Mickey Mouse for president. But that's the point is, when you go and you vote, it means something to the people on the other side, and you get counted. So for all of the religious reasons, amazing, right? Hakar Satayv, V'ro Chol Ha'amei Haaretz, all of that, awesome. But on the more hishtadlus side, by going and voting, and by being there for your community, those who work hard for you can do a better job.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm hoping with this podcast, that even if we get, a handful of people who have a different understanding of why it's so important, that we're able to do our part. Thank you so much for your time. Please send regards to Shalamis,
I will.
the kids, and
Absolutely.
have a good Shabbos.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. The views of the host do not necessarily equate the views of the guests, or vice versa. This podcast is not intended to act as a clinical diagnosis or an authoritative halachic source. Any questions regarding treatment should be directed to your clinician, and any halachic questions should be addressed to your local Orthodox rabbi. We also encourage you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and rate our podcast on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube. Your support helps increase visibility and allows us to reach more listeners who can benefit from our wonderful guest speakers.
This is Rabbi Ben-Zion Schaefer of the Shmooze.com. Jewish adulting is about shining a light on parts of ourselves in order to do Avodas Hashem with all the tools and resources at our disposal. It is an honor and a privilege to have every day to further refine our character and grow closer to Hashem. Take advantage of these opportunities before it's too late.